Before we get into today's video, I just want to give a huge spoiler warning as I'm about to go through the mainline 3D Zelda games, including the newly released Tears of the Kingdom. The Zelda series is my favorite series of all time, and I want anyone who plans to play them to experience the series for themselves, as these games are a magical experience to go through. If you're still here, let's get into it. Today I'm going to be ranking the beginning segments of the 3D Zelda games. I want to make it clear that these are just my opinions, and if you disagree or agree with me, then we can discuss it in the comments. I enjoy discussing the Zelda series with anyone, so please feel free to comment. I will be ranking the beginning segments based on two categories: how well they function as a tutorial for the player, and how well they establish the game's world and characters. Now, what I define as the beginning segments are the parts of the games before the big adventure unfolds. I wanted to make that clear because segments like Hyrule Castle at the beginning of Twilight Princess could still be considered the beginning segment, but I feel like that is the moment where the big adventure unfolds, so I didn't include it in the list. I also wanted to establish that I will be ranking the HD versions of these games as they are more polished, and if I ranked the beginning segments based on the original releases, Skyward Sword would easily be on the bottom due to how slow the original was. Lastly, I won't be ranking the 3D remakes as I don't have the equipment to record footage from my 3DS. Now before I start, let me establish that I don't believe any of these beginning segments are bad, it's just that some are stronger than others to me. With that being said, let's get started. Starting at number 7, we have The Wind Waker. The Wind Waker nicely recaps the events of Ocarina of Time as it will help in establishing later events in Wind Waker's story. The beginning segment is pretty cute and nicely establishes Link's relationship with his grandma and sister. It also takes place on Link's birthday, which is an important detail as Link is now of age to be, unknowingly to him, the new hero and receive the iconic green tunic. Afterwards, a giant bird carrying a girl named Tetra gets dropped into the woods on top of the island. Then, Link decides to go get a sword, and after a quick training session, Link heads into the woods and rescues Tetra. Link's sister then meets up with Link on top of the mountain only to get taken by the giant bird. Thus, Link's motivation for going on the adventure is clear. So Link joins Tetra, but not before Link says goodbye to his grandmother, a very heartbreaking moment. Link departs for the Great Sea to rescue his sister with giving one final wave to his grandmother. The story presentation is a strong one here and a great motivation for Link and the player to set out on this quest. But the reason I rank this lower than the others is due to how quick it all happens. We don't get much time with these characters on the island, so our goodbye to them doesn't feel so strong, except for Link's grandma of course. And the tutorial itself isn't much and doesn't establish much on what more the player can do other than targeting and swinging the sword. And at number 6 is Ocarina of Time. Please don't steal me away. Ocarina of Time's story presentation is a great one when it's establishing the world of Hyrule and Ganondorf, but in terms of characters, there aren't many that have a personal relationship with Link. We do have Saria, who clearly is a childhood friend of Link, and a very happy one too. But the others, such as Navi and the Deku Tree, while important to the story, have only met Link just now, so there isn't a strong personal connection during this presentation in the beginning. I also find the motivation here a little lackluster compared to the other titles. While you can say that Link himself is a good person at heart and will always do the right thing no matter what, I personally like it when there's a personal reason for Link to go on his quest. Link has a personal reason in most of the other Zelda games, while here it's mainly only because he's told to. But despite all of that, the tutorial here is very strong. You're told early on that you need to get a sword and shield, and if you go back and talk to Saria, she'll tell you that you can buy a shield and also find a sword in the forest. I like this because I find it fun when the game doesn't tell you the exact location that you need to go. So you can go around searching until you find the Kokiri sword. And while trying to get the shield, you can learn multiple ways to get rupees. Afterwards, you head to the Deku Tree, who is also the first dungeon of the game. This is a very fantastic first dungeon which teaches you about puzzles, riddles, items, and bosses. Once the dungeon is complete, you're given the history of Hyrule. The Deku Tree passes away and you're given your quest. Once you leave the Kokiri Forest, you say one last goodbye to Saria, and thus the journey truly begins. So this opening segment is great at establishing what the game will be about from a lore and gameplay perspective, but it's Link's motivation that brings it down for me. Moving on to number 5, we have Skyward Sword. It's no secret that Link and Zelda's relationship is the strongest it's ever been in Skyward Sword, even with the release of Tears of the Kingdom. With it being established that they're childhood friends, and it is very, very clear that they have feelings for each other. So the presentation of both a friend and love interest is very strong, which is important as she is our motivation for going on this quest later. Speaking of which, the main quest isn't given to the player for quite a bit as the game is establishing Link and Zelda's relationship through a ceremony which Link needs to get ready for. It's a ceremony where the participants use their loft wings, which Link and Zelda find out that Link's is missing. So Link goes around town looking for his Loft Wing, and he is able to piece together that a group led by a guy named Groose has taken Link's Loft Wing so that Groose can win the ceremony. While looking around for the Loft Wing, Link and the player learn the mechanics of the game, such as stamina and motion controls. As Link figures out the location of his Loft Wing, the player realizes that they need a sword, which is where the controls come into play. The controls have been very controversial, but I have always enjoyed them myself. After Link finds his Loft Wing, we go through the ceremony, and once we win, we learn another mechanic, which is skydiving. But after coming back from Tears of the Kingdom, not gonna lie, it feels a little stiff, but it gets a pass for its time. After the ceremony is complete, Link and Zelda go for a ride. It's during this ride that Zelda gets swallowed up by a black tornado. Link tries, but fails to rescue her. Afterwards, Link is guided by a mysterious figure, Vi, and she gives Link a mission from the goddess Hylia. We learn one final mechanic, which is the Skyward Strike. It is afterwards that Link is given the iconic green tunic, and he sets out for his quest to save Zelda. We skydive down to the surface, and the journey begins. What I really like about this opening is that the tutorial, presentation, and motivation are all very clear and established together very smoothly. My reason for Skyward Sword not being higher on the list comes down to Link's relationship with the characters other than Zelda. A bunch of the other characters' relationships with Link doesn't feel very genuine, they just kind of feel like NPCs. But Zelda, Vi, Groose, and Zelda's father are very well established. Number 4 on this list is Twilight Princess. The game's opening cutscene beautifully establishes Link's relationship with some of the folks of Orden Village. Link has a clear bond with Russell. Russell also offers Link a mission to deliver a sword to Hyrule Castle. After the mission is given, Link and Russell head back to the village, and through facial expression we can see that Link also has a bond with Russell's son Colin. And the next character we see is Ilia, who takes Epona. Afterwards, Fado, a ranch owner, comes to Link's house and asks for help at the ranch and notices that Epona is missing. So Link goes out to find Epona, and he finds her with Ilia, who is now established to be Link's close friend. Sorry for the emphasis on friends, it's just I am a die-hard Zelink shipper. But anyways, the way the characters are established in this game is beautiful. We can see clearly that Link has a connection to everyone in the village, which makes the motivation later in this opening that much stronger. When Link and the player help out at the ranch, it helps the player understand the horse controls. The next day starts, and it's just a simple day in the village for Link. He helps out the people in the village with small tasks and also just enjoys his life at the village. After buying a slingshot that the kids of the village wanted, Link also gets the wooden sword. Then the kids offer target practice for both the slingshot and the sword, which is a nice tutorial as it feels natural to the story and the characters. After the target practice, one of the kids, Tattle, decides to go after a monkey that runs into the woods and gets both himself and the monkey kidnapped. Link goes and saves them both. The next day, Link is helping out at the ranch again. After helping out at the ranch, Link and Ilia have a little argument due to Epona's leg being hurt from going to save Tattle. Ilia then takes Epona to the spring to help her feel better. Link follows, and then Colin explains to Ilia what happened. Ilia then gives Epona back and asks Link to promise her to come home safely. Right after, Link, Ilia, Colin, and Epona are all attacked and knocked out by Boblins. Everyone but Link is taken, and when he regains consciousness, he runs after them on foot, only to run into a dark wall. A hand from a dark creature takes Link into the dark wall and into the twilight. As he's struggling against the creature, the light of the Triforce awakens in Link and helps him escape the grip of the dark creature. But the Triforce also makes Link transform into a wolf, making him pass out. As he is taken, he is followed by a mysterious figure. The motivation for Link to go into this adventure is beautifully established as the relationship with Link and the villagers are shown very naturally. And as for the tutorial, while short, they fit very natural to the story where it doesn't feel like a tutorial, it just feels like Link is going on with his life. This overall presentation is very strong and it's why I love it. We have now reached number 3, Breath of the Wild. The presentation of its story is amazing. The game opens with Link waking up in the Shrine of Resurrection. It can be established to some players right away that Link has died, which makes the player curious as to how he did and what happened around him. Link gets out of the shrine and is presented to the massive world of Hyrule. Afterwards, Link is guided by a voice and an old man. After listening to the voice, it is established that Link has been asleep for 100 years and that a beast will destroy the world if it regains its full power. The old man guides us to a shrine, and when we enter the shrine, it is established to us that the shrines are mini dungeons with puzzles. After this shrine, we are told to go after the other shrines on the plateau. However, when on this plateau, We are free to go wherever we want, whenever we want on this plateau during this opening segment. The player can go hunting, cooking, and it becomes very clear to the player that they can make their own path. Such as when reaching the cold area of the plateau. The player has multiple options to traverse it, such as cooking a cold resistant dish, or having a torch that's lit up, or just trying to tough it out. The player can also receive the cold tunic from toughing out the cold and reaching the summit, or from solving the old man's recipe for him. The game rewards the player for different playstyles, so the game lets you make your own tutorial. The story presentation also offers curiosity to the player as the game gives us clues to the puzzle that we can piece together. After the tasks on the plateau are completed, the old man reveals himself and gives us a lore dump as to what has happened. But even after the lore dump, there's still so many questions to be answered and there's only one way to find out. You set out on your adventure. The motivation for Link himself might be weak because since he doesn't remember anything, it's almost like Ocarina of Time where he's told to go on his quest, and out of the kindness of his spirit, he will. But the player themselves have motivation for putting the puzzle pieces together and finding out what happened to this world and also crafting their own story and adventure. Now, at number 2, I am going to keep this brief as this game is still new and I don't want to spoil too much. The newly released Tears of the Kingdom did almost everything that Breath of the Wild did for its opening segment, but more. With one huge new part added that gives the game a very unique opening compared to any other Zelda game, both 3D and 2D. The descent into the ruins beneath Hyrule Castle. This descent is exciting, it is scary, it is adrenaline rushing, it's something I've never felt playing any other Zelda game and I absolutely love it. The presentation is horrifying, with the music getting more creepy as we descend deeper into the ruins until we find Ganondorf. When we find him, he awakens and brings Hyrule Castle to the sky and attacks Link and Zelda and weakens and damages Link's arm. Link then wakes up in a mysterious cave, again, and realizes that his arm has been replaced with a new one. A mysterious voice guides Link through this new area that's in the sky. Very similar to Breath of the Wild, we have to find shrines, and also very similarly, we can also do this in any order that we want and make our own tutorial and our own adventure, with one key difference being the abilities that Link gets. Some are evolved from Breath of the Wild, while some are entirely new. The world in this game is your sandbox, even the beginning area. Once the objectives are cleared, Zelda herself guides Link with one final line that gives him his motivation.
Link, you must find me.
We have now reached number 1, Majora's Mask. This is not only my favorite 3D Zelda game opening, but also my favorite opening to a video game ever. The game starts by picking up where Ocarina of Time left off. Link has saved Hyrule, but is now in search of Navi. While searching, Link gets ambushed by the Skull Kid and gets his horse and ocarina stolen. So already Link has motivation to go forward. Link then falls into a mysterious land called Termina. Link then gets cursed by the Skull Kid and turns into a Deku Scrub. In order to escape the cave we fell into, Link has to use his new abilities. The cave slowly but cleverly teaches the player how to use the Deku Scrub abilities. And as Link gets out of the cave, he enters the clock tower's base. As he's about to leave the base, he gets stopped by the mask salesman. He asks Link to get the mask worn by the Skull Kid and the Ocarina of Time back so he can end this curse. What I love about this opening is that the motivation for Link isn't for someone else, it's for himself, which makes this opening probably the most unique out of all the 3D Zelda games, cause Link is usually gonna play the hero for his friends or for all of Hyrule, but here, at least during this part, he's doing this for himself. He wants to relieve his curse. Link then goes into town and tries to find a way to find Skull Kid and hopefully get his ocarina back. Tattle tells us to find the Great Fairy. Once we help her, she grants us a new ability. We use this new ability to gather info to head to a new area. This new area shows us the location of Skull Kid, as well as showing the moon above, establishing that it's tumbling down. After a little item quest, Link can now get to Skull Kid. When Link makes contact with the Skull Kid, he starts bringing the moon down. With Link's new ability, we knock the Ocarina of Time out of Skull Kid's hand. Link then plays the Song of Time and goes back in time right after he met the masked salesman. Link shows the masked salesman that he got the Ocarina of Time back and helps Link transform back into a human. The masked salesman tells Link that the Majora's Mask has a truly evil power within it, so Link now has a new motivation, to rescue the people of this world. Another great thing about this opening is the people in Clock Town. Those who have played this game know that they all feel like real people with real stories rather than just random NPCs, which makes Link's new motivation all the more stronger to save these people. I hope you enjoyed this ranking of the 3D Zelda game openings. Did you agree with my rankings? Did you disagree with it? Let us discuss it in the comments, and if you liked the video, please consider subscribing, and I hope all of you heroes have a wonderful day today.